Hey there, it's Silver. This is Bullet Heaven, a show that I've made to take a look at games that were inspired by vampire survivors because it's an emerging and kind of interesting genre, and take a look at some ones that I find particularly neat to look at that stand out from the pack a little bit. So this time I decided to take a look at two games that are pretty new, one of them in particular being brand new, like just now getting ready to release. So that one is the first one I'm taking a look at. This one is Elemental Survivors. This is, I believe, being made by a two-woman team, which is pretty impressive. And it is taking the normal sort of Vampire Survivors formula and then filtering it through the lens of a classic JRPG. So pretty much everything in the game is like old school JRPG themed, which I find pretty neat, and that's the main thing that actually interested me in it at first. That's what helped it stand out and say, take a look at this one, because I'm a fan of JRPGs, I always have been, and seeing the aesthetic and the styling and everything of this game, it definitely made it stand out to me. So the first thing it does different is your limitations on items and things. It's pretty normal in the genre to have usually 5 or 6 slots for weapons and items, so you can, create your build. But in this case, you actually are limited to only 2 weapons and 1 passive item at first, and you're meant to expand that through upgrades. So this is unusual. Usually the upgrades are more about like attack power and movement speed and stuff, and those do exist in this game, but you also have extra equipment slots and things as part of your upgrade scheme to just make the game more complex over time. One thing I really like is that it uses a stat system. So there's like a classic JRPG style, you've got your magic and your spirit and your strength and your dexterity and all that stuff, and every character has a different spread of stats that they start with, as well as, of course, a different starting weapon. And the stats are very important because they determine the power of weapons of that stat. So every time you get a weapon, it is attached to a certain stat. So if you want to grab the bombs, then they're a dex weapon, or if you want to grab the fireballs, they're a magic weapon, and so on. So this means that you have to plan your build around the character you're playing a bit more than is usual for the genre. Oftentimes characters in the genre are more like a starting weapon and maybe a starting set of characteristics, but overall they're very flexible in terms of the kinds of builds they can be built towards. And in this game it's a little bit different because of the stat system. This means that different characters are more predisposed to certain weapons than others, although you can change this a little bit because you have those equipment slots, and you'll find that the actual game screen itself is based on like a classic JRPG world map. So it's like you're running around on a world map fighting monsters, which is a pretty cool little touch. And you don't actually get new items, new passive items from leveling up in this game. Instead, you actually find towns as you would exploring around a normal JRPG world map. There are little towns for you to find, and each town will have a different set of items that you can choose from. So whenever you want a new item, you just have to follow the exclamation point on the side of the screen that tells you that a new town has spawned, and you can waltz over there and enter the town and pick something. So this means that you can actually get several items very early on in the game because it's not limited to levels. I think this is part of the reason they made it so where you only have a small number of equipment slots to start off with, because otherwise you could have like an entire suite of passive items at like the first minute or two of the game if you're not careful, and end up totally breaking the challenge. And this is, of course, helped along by the fact that the towns don't spawn immediately, so you can't necessarily go and run to all of them. You do have to actually wait until they arrive for you to be able to visit them and then get an item. So the balance is actually pretty good, I think, when it comes to limiting the character to a specific number of weapons and items early on, and then sort of branching out later. And the items that you're getting are actually styled as JRPG equipment. So, new armors, new hats, all sorts of stuff like that. And the idea is, of course, every time you're on a JRPG world map and you visit a new town, you go to the item shop first and you visit whatever weapons and magic shops they have and all that stuff, and get your party equipped with new stuff. And this is supposed to sort of evoke that spirit, so you visit the towns in order to get new items. However, items are not the only thing you can get, because this game also has a party system, which was a bit unexpected. You start out with 1 party slot, and this is another thing that you can upgrade over time between runs. And sometimes when you visit a town, instead of being a town that has shops, it's a town that you can recruit a party member from, and the party member actually travels along with you. They have some sort of stat they increase depending on what they are, so like a wizard party member will increase your magic stat, for instance. They usually also have some sort of extra effect they give you, like increasing the size of certain weapon projectiles or giving you extra piercing for your projectiles and things like that. And then they have a weapon that they themselves will actually fire, so you can consider a party member slot kind of like an extra weapon slot that doesn't take up one of your other weapon slots. And of course, in classic style, as you level up, you will be increasing the level of all of the weapons and equipment that you have, which will increase their effects. And I like the fact that the sprites for each of the pieces of equipment actually change when you max them out. That's a cute touch. And I also like that this is the main way to unlock new characters, is actually to recruit them from a village and then to max their level out during a run. And then once you finish the run, either with a win or a loss, you will gain that character as an unlockable character that you can spend some of your gems on to play next time, which is pretty cool. This means that the way that you expand your roster feels very organic, because you're just sort of out recruiting the characters like a classic RPG. And I like the touches of making a lot of the mechanics very JRPG themed in a way that makes sense and feels evocative of like a lot of the classic Final Fantasies and Dragon Quests and things, but in a Vampire Survivors-esque formula. The music, by the way, is also quite good, and they're actually styled as mini-discs that you collect and then play. You'll see on the right, sort of middle right of the screen, there's a music player, and you can actually swap between the tracks at any time you want and play through these discs, which is another cute little touch that I really enjoy, and it helps that the music is actually quite good. And you'll also see below that there's a sort of a track that shows you what's coming next. This is unusual. I've never actually seen it quite like this in a Vampire Survivors style game before, but yeah, this game actually shows you what's going to happen, so you always know 2 or 3 minutes in advance what's sort of coming. So it has a track for every minute and then shows you what kinds of monsters will start spawning at that point, and it also shows you what bosses will spawn. And these are 20-minute runs. At the 20-minute mark, the final boss will spawn. They are very large and hard to miss, and are extremely difficult, but of course, as you beat the areas, you get access to new areas with new music tracks and new enemy types and all that stuff, and new characters to unlock as well. As for the early access campaign, things that I would personally recommend that are, changed or improved or whatever, I would suggest they use some sort of custom mouse cursor as opposed to the OS mouse cursor, because the simple white hand that it currently is very easy to lose in the chaos. I find myself losing it all the time, so having a more contrasty, bright cursor that's unique to the game would be beneficial, I think. And the other thing that I would personally suggest is an arrow on the side of the screen indicating where the boss is, because it's surprisingly easy to completely lose track of the bosses after they spawn. Sometimes they get stuck on stuff, or sometimes they just don't follow you. There are even some bosses that actually travel away from you on purpose because they're ranged bosses. Those are very easy to lose. And I've actually lost a run before because I escaped the boss battle temporarily, the final boss, to go get some health potions, and then I tried to find them again and I never could. I ended up losing because I could never find them, no matter where I went, and I ended up getting overwhelmed by all the continuously spawning enemies. So I definitely think that some sort of, hey, the boss is over here, doofus arrow would be really useful for the game, because it's very easy to lose track of them. And the other game I took a look at this time was HoloCure, Save the Fans. So I know zero about HoloLive or Vtubers or any of that stuff. That's just not really a world that I'm a part of. I've actually been meaning to try some of those streams just to see what it's like, but I know nothing about anything in this game. So I knew from the start that a lot of the references and jokes and stuff were going to go way over my head, and I wasn't going to know exactly what was going on. But in my opinion, the mark of a good fan game is that it's a good enough game at its foundation that even a non-fan can still enjoy it, and I've definitely found that to be the case with this game. It's actually a blast to play, and it's got so much love and passion put into it. It's kind of ridiculous that this game is free, by the way. These games are known to usually be around like $3 to $5, so they're easy to recommend because of their low price, but this case it is extremely easy to recommend because it is free, and when I say free, I also mean no microtransactions or cosmetic DLCs or anything like that. It is free. So one of the biggest differences in this game as opposed to its contemporaries is that it goes all in on making each of the characters as unique as possible, which, if you think about it, makes sense, right? Because they're supposed to be VTubers with their own set personalities and things, so they're going to be unique. And the game has several mechanics that help to facilitate this. First off, everyone starts with a weapon, but their weapon is unique to them. So everyone's starting weapon is something that only they can get. It's exclusive, which helps them feel unique in that regard. Also, the starting weapon, once it's leveled up to level 7, which is the max for weapons in this game, it awakens. It has some sort of awakened form which changes the way it looks, and also gives it some extra capabilities, usually making it a lot stronger. In addition to that, though, every character actually has their own active skill they can use while in battle. They have a special ability that they can charge up a meter for just by killing enemies and things, and once it's full, you can right-click whenever you want in order to set off this ability, and everyone's is different. So that is another thing that makes the characters entirely unique. They all have some sort of special, ultimate kind of ability. But in addition to all of that, there's also the skills. These are passive effects that are unique to each character. Every character has 3 different skills they can level up. So amongst all the various things that you can choose while leveling up, like new weapons, new items and stuff, these skills will also be mixed in. And these are really important to get because not only are they unique to each character, but they're also very powerful, and they tend to work together in some way that makes a lot of sense, and oftentimes they're what helps to establish the theme of that character. Like, for instance, there's one character who uses like light and dark spiraling beams as her weapon, and she has like an angel half and a devil half skill, and the angel half skill makes it to where when she gets a crit, she has a chance of healing. And the devil half skill makes it to where every time she heals from something, she gets a stackable attack buff. So you can see how those obviously work together. And then her third skill is a increase to crit chance, which of course also works with the other two. So yeah, the skills are very important to get and to level up because they establish the theme of that character and often work together with their main weapon to make them unique. But of course, in addition to their starting weapon, you can find all sorts of other weapons through leveling up, and they're usually ridiculous and silly, like glow sticks and things like that, and they're all pretty fun to use, I found so far, and they have a good amount of personality to them, even if I don't always get the references they're going for. I say always, if I don't ever get the references they're going for, but still, they are fun to use. And there's also the collab weapons, which are this game's version of the Vampire Survivors evolved weapons, but they're arguably even more powerful than those, because not only are collab weapons super strong, but they actually free up a weapon slot, allowing you to equip an additional weapon than you otherwise would be able to. So once you get 2 weapons that can collab together to max level, which is 7, shortly after that a golden anvil will spawn from the sky, and you can use this anvil to combine both of those weapons into a collab weapon. There are also super collab weapons, which I've never been able to use so far, but they involve finding this golden hammer first in order to be able to make them, and I'm sure they're probably ridiculously powerful and maybe even necessary for the hard mode levels, because I haven't actually managed to beat one of the hard mode levels yet. They're very challenging. There are, of course, several other mechanics that help to differentiate the game from its contemporaries as well, like for instance the sticker system. You'll find eventually once you unlock it through spending some coins on the upgrade menu, you can unlock these stickers, and occasionally enemies and bosses and things will drop a sticker, and you can put these on your weapon. They only appear on the main weapon the character starts with, and you got 3 different slots, and you can put whatever stickers you want in those slots, and they augment the weapon in some way, increasing its effect, although some of them are entirely useless, like the RGB sticker, which just makes all of your attacks all rainbow colored and does nothing else. But most of them do have some sort of beneficial function, and creating a good sticker build for that character's weapon is an extra layer of strategy for the harder modes, which is a pretty cool thing to add. There's also these anvils that can appear aside from the golden ones, and the anvils allow you to freely upgrade one of the weapons you have that isn't at max level, so this is a way to take some of the burden away from leveling up and allow you to upgrade weapons separately, which is really cool. But they also allow you to spend your meta currency, the coins, on upgrading weapons that are already at max level, basically limit breaking them and allowing you to make them even stronger than they can normally get. Although every time you do this successfully, the success chance of the next try gets lower and lower, so as you make your weapons more and more ridiculously powerful, it's going to start costing you more and more coins to keep it going. There's also some additional stuff like the enchant mechanic. Occasionally you'll find some weapons in the level up menu glow blue, and they have an extra stat enchanted on them, so it's a way to get randomly more powerful weapons, and it may make you alter your build in a direction you didn't expect because you found a particularly powerful enchant by chance. And there are also the extra powerful super items that you can only get very rarely. Sometimes when you open a chest, instead of being a single or a triple chest, it will glow all rainbow colored, and that tells you that it's going to erupt into a big super item, which is a super powerful version of a normally acquirable passive item that you can get elsewhere. These are very, very good, but of course extremely rare to obtain most of the time as well. The game has a relatively ridiculous amount of content to it, especially for a free game. It's got something like 38 different characters, most of which you have to unlock. There's actually a character gacha, like a gachapon system in this game, although don't worry, it's a moneyless gacha, and you can't buy your way through it with real money. It just allows you to spend some of the meta currency coins you have to unlock new characters. And there are various different banners sort of emulating a mobile gacha game, only not predatory and actually just sort of for a joke instead. And you can roll on these banners with your coins in order to unlock new characters. There's just so much to this game and so much love and passion that's been poured into creating it that it's become one of my favorite Vampire Survivors style games. It's right up there with the original for me personally as something that I'll plop on the Steam Deck and play just whenever I want, because it's just a really, really good example of the genre, and it does so much right as well as so much different that it really stands out. And with how crowded the genre is becoming, that means a lot, especially for something that doesn't cost anything. Personally, if you're a fan of the genre, I can recommend both of these games, as I think they both have a lot of love and a lot of interesting ideas and things, and I think they're both really good examples of the genre, but I do have to admit, HoloCure has so much passion put into it that if you're going to try just one of these from today's video, that's the one that I would personally recommend. It's just so good. It has no right to be as good as it does, because it's just a fan game. You wouldn't expect it necessarily to be like that, but it is really good. And as far as Elemental Survivors goes, I love the theme and I like a lot of the mechanics that are in place. I'm excited to see where it goes in its early access campaign, because I have a feeling by the time it reaches its full 1.0 release, it will be an extremely standout example of the genre on its own. You can find links to the Steam store pages of both of these games in the description below this video so that you can go and check them out on your own time. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.